It's undeniable the fascination that most people have with true crime documentaries and TV shows, especially women. And there's a good reason for that you're about to find out. Plus, I'm gonna give you the one thing that everybody misses in this documentary so you can reduce the odds of being the next victim. Let's get down to it. Welcome back, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy. And I was asking myself this question the other day when I found out that Dahmer is Netflix's 9th most watched English language series of all time. The documentary about Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer that, well, you know, is one of the most famous serial killers of all time. And this is a topic that has proven to be very profitable for these streaming services like Tiger King, Unsolved Mysteries, Jeffrey Epstein, of course, Crime Scene, The Vanishing of the Cecil Hotel, Night Stalker, American Murder, all have been number one in ranking in these ratings. Now, the question is, why are we so fascinated by them? And especially, why are women so attracted to these kind of shows? That's why I made this question on my Twitter account. Baddies, why do you think women love to watch true crime documentaries even when the majority of the victims portrayed are women? And I got the most varied answers that you can imagine, so we can learn who to watch out for. My husband says it's because I have a bitter and twisted heart. I need to check nobody has already stolen my idea. Good point. To prepare for the one thing we can prepare for. Good question. I fall asleep to true crime podcasts. I always wonder if that made me a psychopath. And this one. Training vids, how to recognize when to run. And I said, all right, that is pretty much the same reason men watch MMA. But no, there are some studies behind this. A paper published in the Social, Psychological and Personality Science journal found that women enjoyed consuming true crime content far more than men, despite the latter generally liking violent media more than the fairer sex. Researchers asked nearly 14,000 participants to choose between two true crime books, one of which had information about how to escape from an assailant and another that didn't have that information. An overwhelming majority of female participants chose the book that promised to teach them how to evade a killer, as opposed to male participants who were more evenly split between the two books. So at first sight, it looks like, yes, women like to watch these kinds of shows because they want to be prepared or learn something about this kind of behavior. And not only watching, because when it comes to podcasts, Brandwatch React published some very insightful numbers. You have the female followers of true crime podcasts a lot more than male followers. There are even YouTubers like Bailey Sarian who has become famous by combining makeup tutorials with true crime. I mean, that is an amazing display of coordination. I don't know how she does that. Maybe play the cello and do body language analysis? Now look at the left side of his face. But jokes aside, we watch these shows because we want to learn some kind of behavior patterns of these people so we can be better prepared in those moments. That is regardless if we are men or women. And that is also one of the reasons why books like Manhunter inside the FBI's elite serial crime unit have become so popular, and popular also as Netflix series. And I have a huge problem with this trying to identify behavioral patterns in very toxic personalities, and is that you might think that you will be able to tell who is a psychopath and who's not. And that is something that I've said about body language too. You can't just say, hey, he made this gesture or this movement with his hand or his foot or something, and that means that he's lying or he's a psychopath or he's a serial killer. That doesn't work like this. Body language needs a lot of observation, a lot of listening, how to ask questions. You have seen my videos. Maybe you have seen some of my videos. You already know that it's a complicated process. I try to streamline it as much as I can so you can absorb these details. But I've never implied that you could catch a psychopath just by looking at them. And there's something else that has to be said about these cases. Women are especially wary of psychological baiting. What is psychological baiting? In most of these cases, it's not like the overpowering of the victim by brute force, by physicality. It's more a psychological baiting. Could be the case of a man like Ted Bundy with his charisma could lure women into his, well, you know what he did. And yes, that might be one of the reasons why women watch more true crime documentaries than mixed martial arts, because they think they could overcome those psychological baiting clues. At the same time, something that we can't deny is that some of us feel a bit better that we were not the victims of these people. But we actually want to make sure that this doesn't happen to us. And I mentioned that psychological baiting because it's not only male serial killers or male psychopaths or male murderers, because there are also women that do these kind of things, and of course they couldn't overpower men with physical force. They had to use their psychology. So the real question is, what is the one thing that everybody misses from these shows and can help you to identify those moments that, well, can lead you to trouble with very toxic personalities, and that is moments of vulnerability. We talk about moments of vulnerability because it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. This kind of people will try to attack you or approach you in your most vulnerable moments. So it will seem common sense to, at any point, be prepared, right? But does it mean that you have to be paranoid at all times, that you have to be looking over your shoulder no matter what? No, that is not a good way to live. That is not something that I advise, and that is something that can take a hit to your mental health. A much better approach is to think in terms of situational awareness, to think about what is going around you. And you might think, well, I'm always aware of what is going around me. When I'm walking, when I'm driving, when I'm interacting with people, I know what is going around me. And most of the time, it is not. Because we are so used to the familiarity of our surroundings, or the street that we live, the grocery shop that we visit, the library, school. We become familiar to those places, and at some point we become unaware of what is going around us because we are so used to that happening every day that we just relax and just leave our guard down. Now, how can we be aware of our situation without being paranoid? It's just to be observant of what happens around us. It's that simple. We tend to take for granted what is going around us. It happens all the time because our brain is going to take the shortcut. It's going to take shortcuts to, well, less processing power to anything that's going on within us and outside us. But we need to have that awareness. We need to be mindful of the things, the people, what they say, where, how do they look, their body language, everything. That is not something to protect us from serial killers, because it's really remote possibility to be a victim of them. But it's something that can help us a lot in our lives, especially to interact and to identify the intentions of others. It pays a lot. It is very helpful in terms of body language, by the way, to be able to be on the lookout of those tiny clues at all moments. Now, we also have to take into account our biases. And I want to mention the TV show Dexter, for that matter. If you haven't seen Dexter, is a psychopath, a murderer that, well, he helps law enforcement to catch criminals and in some cases, well, dispose of them himself. The monetary incentive for producing true crime content also opens up a new can of worms. Is our consumption of true crime incentivizing companies to make hyper-sensationalized content where the facts of a case take the backseat to dramatic speculation simply because it's more entertaining? On that note, is the fame we're giving serial killers spawning copycats? That's a very interesting topic, a very thought-provoking subject. Because most of these characters, whether if they are from real life or are fiction, are always portrayed in this way that they are hyper intelligent, hyper charismatic, that they know whatever they are doing. They're like a Joker to Batman. So it will be totally normal that at some point, if you binge watch these shows, you will be asking the question, is every charismatic man dangerous? And it's a silly question to ask because we know that is not true. But that's why I told you that it's so hard to predict these patterns of behavior, and that's why that is not the right approach. I'm going to guess these patterns of behavior. No, I don't think that's a good idea. A much better approach is to act in a way that prevents those events from happening, and it helps a lot to be mindful of your surroundings. Remember to download my 100 body language tips right in the description of this video. My body language buddies, my name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and until we meet on another video or another live, much love and bliss.